Hey guys, tonight we begin with the quiet, intellectual world of an 18th century mathematician. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like and subscribe, and then comment down below your favorite number and what time it is for you. Tonight, we are going to close our eyes and drift back to a time when the world was on the cusp of a great intellectual awakening, a period known as the Age of Enlightenment. It was an era of profound change, where reason and individualism began to challenge the long-standing traditions of the past, and at the heart of this revolution of thought were the mathematicians. Imagine you are in the year 1760. The world outside your window is one of horse-drawn carriages clattering over cobblestone streets, of flickering candlelight casting long shadows across rooms filled with books, and of whispered conversations in coffeehouses where the latest philosophical and scientific ideas are debated with a quiet passion. In this world, you are a mathematician, not a profession in the modern sense, with a clear career path and a steady salary, but something more akin to a gentleman scholar, a natural philosopher, who seeks to understand the universe through the elegant language of numbers. Your life is not one of grand adventures or dramatic events. It is a life of quiet contemplation, of patient study, and of the slow, deliberate unraveling of the universe's secrets. It is a life lived in the hushed halls of universities, in the dusty corners of libraries, and in the solitary confines of your own study. Your companions are not soldiers or merchants, but the works of the great minds who came before you: Euclid, Archimedes, Newton, and Leibniz. Their thoughts, their theories, their elegant proofs are your constant companions, your guides in the vast, uncharted territory of mathematical discovery. Tonight, we will explore what it was really like to be a mathematician in this fascinating era. We will delve into the everyday details of their lives, the tools they used, the problems they grappled with, the society they inhabited. We will imagine the feel of the rough-hewn paper beneath their fingertips, the smell of the ink as they carefully transcribed their equations, the quiet satisfaction of a proof finally falling into place after weeks or even months of painstaking work. So, find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and let your mind drift back in time. Let the gentle rhythm of our story guide you into a state of deep relaxation as we uncover the quiet, contemplative world of the 18th century mathematician. Our journey begins not in a grand university or a royal court, but in a quiet room, your study, as the first light of dawn begins to filter through the leaded glass of your window. The world outside is still asleep, the sounds of the city a mere whisper. This is your time, the hours of quiet solitude before the world awakens, when your mind is at its sharpest, it's most receptive to the subtle beauty of numbers. The room is modest, but it is your sanctuary. The walls are lined with bookshelves, crammed with leather-bound volumes, their spines embossed with the names of the great thinkers of the past. The air is thick with the scent of old paper, of beeswax from the candles you used late into the night, and of the faint, sweet aroma of the pipe tobacco you occasionally indulge in. In the center of the room stands your desk, a sturdy oak affair, its surface a chaotic yet organized landscape of books, papers, and instruments. Your gaze falls upon the tools of your trade, scattered across the desk. There is a brass compass, its point still sharp, a symbol of the geometric precision you strive for. Beside it lies a straightage, its wooden surface worn smooth with use. A collection of quills, their feathers neatly trimmed, rests in a simple ceramic pot next to a small, corked bottle of ink. These are the instruments that will translate the abstract thoughts in your mind into tangible form, a bridge between the world of ideas and the physical world. You reach for a fresh sheet of paper, its surface slightly rough to the touch. It is a luxury, this paper, handmade from linen rags, and you handle it with a sense of reverence. Each sheet is a blank canvas, an opportunity to create something new, to explore a new mathematical landscape. You dip your quill into the ink, the sharp, metallic scent a familiar comfort, and then you begin to write. The problem that has been occupying your thoughts for the past few weeks is one of celestial mechanics. You are trying to refine the calculations of the moon's orbit, a notoriously difficult task that has stumped even the greatest minds. The moon, with its irregular, wobbly path, refuses to conform to simple, elegant equations. It is a messy, complicated problem, but it is a challenge you relish. Your work is not a solitary endeavor, though it may often feel that way. You are part of a wider community of thinkers, a network of mathematicians and natural philosophers scattered across Europe. You correspond with them regularly, your letters filled with equations, diagrams, and lengthy, detailed explanations of your latest findings. These letters, which can take weeks or even months to reach their destination, are the lifeblood of your intellectual world. They are a source of inspiration, of collaboration, and of friendly, yet fierce, competition. You have a rival, a fellow mathematician in Paris, with whom you have been engaged in a long and complex debate about the nature of infinity. Your letters to him are filled with intricate arguments and counter-arguments, each of you trying to outdo the other with the elegance and rigor of your proofs. It is a rivalry born of mutual respect, a shared passion for the pursuit of knowledge. And though you may never meet in person, you feel a deep connection to this man, a sense of camaraderie that transcends the physical distance between you. As the morning progresses, the sounds of the city begin to grow. The clatter of hooves on cobblestones, the calls of street vendors, the distant chime of a church bell. But in your study, you are lost in your work. The outside world a mere distraction. You are in a world of pure thought, a world of abstract beauty and logical precision. Your calculations cover page after page of paper, a cascade of numbers and symbols. You work slowly, deliberately, checking and rechecking each step. A single mistake, a misplaced number or a faulty assumption can undo weeks of work. It is a process that requires immense patience and concentration, a mental discipline that you have honed over years of practice. The sun climbs higher in the sky, casting a warm, golden light across your desk. You pause in your work, your eyes tired from hours of intense focus. You rise from your chair and walk to the window, stretching your stiff limbs. Below, the city is now fully awake, a bustling hive of activity. You watch the people go about their daily lives, the merchants hawking their wares, the children playing in the street, and you feel a sense of detachment, as if you are observing a different world, a world governed by different laws. Your world is one of order, of logic, of a universe that can be understood through the power of reason. It is a world that is often at odds with the messy, chaotic reality of everyday life, and yet you believe that your work has a purpose, that by unraveling the mathematical secrets of the universe, you are contributing to a greater understanding of the world, a more enlightened age. You return to your desk, your mind refreshed, your determination renewed. The problem of the moon's orbit still looms large, a formidable challenge. But you are not discouraged. You know that with patience, with perseverance, and with the unwavering belief in the power of reason, you will eventually find a solution. And in that moment of discovery, in that flash of insight, when the pieces of the puzzle finally fall into place, you will experience a sense of joy, of profound satisfaction that is known only to those who have dedicated their lives to the quiet, contemplative pursuit of mathematical truth. As the day wears on, you may find yourself leaving the solitude of your study and venturing out into the city. Perhaps you have a lecture to attend at the local university, or a meeting of the scientific society to which you belong. These are opportunities to engage with your fellow thinkers, to share your ideas, and to learn from the work of others. The university is a place of hallowed tradition, its ancient stone walls echoing with the footsteps of generations of scholars. The lecture hall is a cavernous space, with rows of wooden benches facing a raised platform where the professor stands. The air is cool and still, with a faint, musty smell of old books and aging wood. The students, all young men from wealthy families, sit attentively, their notebooks open, their quills poised. The lecture is on the latest advancements in calculus, a field that is still relatively new and fiercely debated. The professor, a man with a long, white beard and a booming voice, fills the blackboard with a dizzying array of equations, his chalk leaving a trail of white dust. You listen intently, scribbling notes in your own notebook, your mind racing to keep up with the complex arguments. After the lecture, you gather with a small group of fellow mathematicians in a nearby coffee house. The coffee house is a new and fashionable institution, a place where men from all walks of life can gather to drink the exotic new beverage and engage in lively conversation. The air is thick with the aroma of roasted coffee beans and the buzz of animated debate. You find a table in a quiet corner and order a cup of coffee, the dark, bitter liquid a welcome stimulant. You and your companions spend the next few hours engrossed in conversation, discussing the lecture, debating the finer points of calculus, and sharing your own research. It is a stimulating and invigorating experience, a welcome change from the solitude of your study. As evening approaches, you make your way home, your mind still buzzing with the ideas and arguments of the day. You return to your study, the familiar scent of old paper and beeswax a comforting embrace. You light a candle, its soft, flickering light casting a warm glow across your desk. You pick up your quill and return to the problem of the moon's orbit. The conversations of the day have given you a new perspective, a fresh insight into the problem. You begin to see a new path forward, a new line of attack. You work late into the night, the world outside growing quiet once more. The only sound is the scratching of your quill on paper, a quiet testament to your unwavering dedication. This is your life as an 18th-century mathematician. A life of quiet contemplation, of patient study, and of the slow, deliberate unraveling of the universe's secrets. It is a life that may seem mundane to some, but to you, it is a life of profound purpose and deep satisfaction. You are a pioneer, an explorer of the abstract world of numbers, and your discoveries, however small they may seem, are contributing to a greater understanding of the universe, a more enlightened age. And as you finally lay down your quill and extinguish your candle, you do so with a sense of peace, a sense of fulfillment, knowing that you have spent another day in the noble pursuit of knowledge, a quiet soldier in the grand army of human reason. The world of an 18th-century mathematician was not confined to the study or the university. It extended to the salons, the drawing rooms of the wealthy and influential, where the latest intellectual fashions were discussed with an air of refined elegance. To be a mathematician in this era was to be a member of a certain social class, a gentleman of leisure who had the time and the resources to pursue his intellectual passions. Imagine you have been invited to a salon hosted by a wealthy patroness of the arts and sciences. You arrive at her grand townhouse, the sound of a string quartet drifting out into the cool night air. You are greeted at the door by a liveried servant, who takes your coat and hat and announces your name to the assembled guests. The drawing room is a dazzling spectacle of opulence and refinement. The walls are adorned with silk wallpaper and ornate gilt mirrors, which reflect the light of 1,000 candles from a crystal chandelier. The furniture is upholstered in rich velvet and brocade, and the air is fragrant with the scent of expensive perfume and beeswax. The room is filled with a glittering assembly of the city's elite aristocrats, politicians, artists, and fellow intellectuals. They are engaged in animated conversation, their voices a low murmur beneath the music of the quartet. You navigate the crowded room, exchanging polite greetings with acquaintances, your mind a whirl of social niceties. You are introduced to your hostess, a woman of formidable intelligence and charm. She is a great admirer of your work, and she listens with rapt attention as you explain your latest research on the moon's orbit. She introduces you to other guests who share your interests, a botanist who has just returned from an expedition to the Americas, a philosopher who is writing a treatise on the nature of human reason, an astronomer who has discovered a new comet. You spend the evening engaged in a series of stimulating conversations, your mind alive with new ideas. You debate the merits of Newton's theory of gravity. You discuss the implications of the latest discoveries in anatomy. You argue about the proper role of government in a modern society. It is a world away from the quiet solitude of your study, but is a world that is equally important to your work. It is here, in these social gatherings, that ideas are exchanged, that collaborations are formed, and that the seeds of new discoveries are sown. But even in this glittering world of high society, you are still a mathematician. Your mind is always at work, always searching for patterns, for connections, for the underlying mathematical principles that govern the universe. You may find yourself, in the midst of a lively conversation, your gaze drifting to the intricate geometric patterns of the parquet floor or the graceful parabolic arc of a lady's fan. You may find yourself mentally calculating the odds of a particular hand of cards at the gaming table, or pondering the mathematical principles behind the harmony of the string quartet. As the night draws to a close, you take your leave, your mind filled with a jumble of new ideas and social obligations. You return to the quiet of your own home, the silence of your study a welcome respite from the noise and glitter of the salon. You light a candle and sit at your desk, the familiar weight of a book in your hands. You are not just a mathematician, a solver of equations and a prover of theorems. You are a natural philosopher, a seeker of knowledge in all its forms. Your library is not limited to mathematical texts. It contains books on history, on philosophy, on literature, on art. You believe that all knowledge is interconnected, that a true understanding of the universe requires a broad and liberal education. You spend the last hours of the night reading, your mind drifting from the elegant prose of a Roman historian to the sublime poetry of a Renaissance master. You see mathematics everywhere, in the rhythm of the verse, in the structure of the narrative, in the balance of the composition. You see the world as a vast and intricate tapestry, woven together with the threads of mathematical truth. This is the life of an 18th-century mathematician, a life of contrasts, of quiet solitude and glittering society, of abstract thought and worldly engagement. It is a life that is both challenging and rewarding, a life dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge, to the unraveling of the universe's secrets, and to the advancement of human reason. And as you finally drift off to sleep, your dreams are filled with numbers, with shapes, with the elegant, timeless beauty of mathematical truth. The tools of the 18th-century mathematician were simple yet elegant. They were the physical embodiment of the abstract principles that they studied, a tangible link between the world of ideas and the material world. Let us take a closer look at these instruments, these humble yet powerful tools that help to shape our understanding of the universe. The compass, with its two slender legs joined by a hinged joint, was perhaps the most fundamental of these tools. It was the instrument of the geometer, the creator of perfect circles and arcs, the building blocks of Euclidean geometry. The compass was not just a tool for drawing. It was a tool for thinking, for exploring the relationships between points, lines, and curves. A mathematician could spend hours with a compass and a straightedge, creating intricate geometric constructions, proving theorems, and discovering new mathematical properties. The straightedge, a simple, unadorned strip of wood or metal, was the compass's inseparable companion. It was the instrument of the line, the symbol of rectilinearity, of directness, of logical progression. With a compass and a straightedge, a mathematician could construct a vast and beautiful world of geometric shapes, a world governed by the immutable laws of logic and reason. The quill and ink were the tools of the algebraist, the manipulator of symbols, the solver of equations. The act of writing, of carefully forming the letters and numbers, was an integral part of the mathematical process. It was a way of externalizing thought, of giving it a tangible form that could be examined, manipulated, and refined. The ink, a dark, viscous fluid, was the lifeblood of mathematics, the medium through which abstract ideas were brought to life. The paper, a precious commodity in the 18th century, was the canvas upon which the mathematician worked his magic. It was a surface that could be filled with a universe of numbers and symbols, a record of the mind's journey into the abstract realms of mathematical thought. A single sheet of paper could contain a proof that had taken months to perfect, a solution to a problem that had puzzled the greatest minds for centuries. But the 18th century mathematician did not rely solely on these simple tools. He also had access to a growing array of more sophisticated instruments, devices that extended the reach of his senses and the power of his mind. The telescope, a recent invention that had revolutionized the study of the heavens, was a powerful tool for the mathematician, astronomer. It allowed him to observe the movements of the planets and stars with unprecedented accuracy, to gather the data that would be used to test and refine the theories of celestial mechanics. The telescope was a window to the cosmos, a device that revealed the mathematical harmony of the universe. The microscope, another recent invention, opened up a new and unseen world, a world of intricate and beautiful structures that were invisible to the naked eye. The mathematician naturalist could use the microscope to study the delicate geometry of a snowflake, the intricate cellular structure of a plant, the crystalline forms of minerals. The microscope revealed that the mathematical principles of order and harmony were not confined to the heavens, but were present in the smallest and most humble of creations. The slide rule, a mechanical analog computer, was a powerful tool for calculation. It allowed the mathematician to perform complex multiplications and divisions with speed and accuracy, freeing up his mind to focus on more conceptual matters. The slide rule was a testament to the power of human ingenuity, a device that harnessed the principles of logarithms to create a tool of immense practical value. And then there were the books, the silent companions of the mathematician, the repositories of centuries of accumulated knowledge. The works of Euclid, of Archimedes, of Newton, of Leibniz, these were the giants upon whom the 18th-century mathematician stood. He would spend countless hours in his library, poring over these ancient texts, studying their proofs, wrestling with their ideas, and seeking to build upon the foundations that they had laid. The life of an 18th-century mathematician was a life lived in close communion with these tools, these instruments of thought and discovery. They were not just inanimate objects. They were extensions of his mind, his hands, his senses. They were the means by which he could explore the abstract world of mathematics, and in doing so, come to a deeper understanding of the universe and his place within it. And as we continue our journey into the past, let us keep these tools in mind, for they are the keys to unlocking the secrets of this fascinating and important era in the history of science. The mathematical problems that occupied the minds of 18th-century mathematicians were as varied as they were challenging. They ranged from the purely abstract, the exploration of the fundamental nature of numbers and space, to the intensely practical, the application of mathematical principles to the problems of navigation, engineering, and finance. One of the most significant areas of research during this period was the development of calculus. The foundations of calculus had been laid in the previous century by Isaac Newton and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, but it was in the 18th century that their ideas were refined, expanded, and applied to a wide range of problems. Mathematicians like Leonhard Euler, Joseph Louis Lagrange, and Pierre Simon Laplace made seminal contributions to the field, developing new techniques for solving differential equations, for calculating the variations of functions, and for analyzing the behavior of complex systems. Calculus was the key to unlocking the secrets of the physical world. It was the language that could describe the motion of the planets, the flow of fluids, the vibration of a violin string. It was the tool that could be used to design stronger bridges, more accurate clocks, and more efficient machines. The development of calculus was one of the greatest intellectual achievements of the 18th century, and it laid the groundwork for the scientific and technological revolutions of the centuries to come. Another major area of research was number theory, the study of the properties of integers. This was a field that had fascinated mathematicians since antiquity, but it was in the 18th century that it began to take on a more systematic and rigorous form. Mathematicians like Euler, Lagrange, and Adrian Marie Legendre made important discoveries about prime numbers, about Diophantine equations, and about the law of quadratic reciprocity. Number theory was a field of pure, abstract beauty, a world of elegant patterns and surprising connections. But it was also a field that would later find unexpected applications in areas like cryptography and computer science. Geometry also continued to be a fruitful area of research. The 18th century saw the development of new branches of geometry, such as descriptive geometry, which was used in architectural and engineering design, and differential geometry, which was used to study the properties of curves and surfaces. The foundations of Euclidean geometry, which had stood unchallenged for over 2 millennia, also began to be questioned. Mathematicians like Girolamo Saccheri and Johann Heinrich Lambert began to explore the possibility of non-Euclidean geometries, a line of inquiry that would eventually lead to a profound revolution in our understanding of space. But the 18th century mathematician was not just concerned with abstract theory. He was also deeply engaged with the practical problems of his time. The Age of Enlightenment was also an age of exploration, of trade, of industrialization, and all of these activities required the application of mathematical knowledge. Navigation was a particularly important area of application. The ability to determine a ship's position at sea was crucial for trade and exploration. Mathematicians worked to develop more accurate methods for determining longitude, a problem that had plagued sailors for centuries. They created detailed astronomical tables, they designed more precise chronometers, and they developed new techniques for celestial navigation. Engineering was another area where mathematics played a vital role. The construction of canals, of bridges, of fortifications, All of these required a sophisticated understanding of mechanics, of materials science, and of geometric design. Mathematicians worked closely with engineers to solve these practical problems, to ensure that the structures they built were safe, durable, and efficient. Finance was also an emerging area of mathematical application. The growth of trade and commerce led to the development of new financial instruments, such as stocks, bonds, and insurance policies. Mathematicians were called upon to develop methods for calculating interest, for assessing risk, and for determining the value of these complex financial products. The foundations of probability theory, which had been laid in the previous century, were now being applied to the very real-world problems of gambling, insurance, and annuities. The life of an 18th-century mathematician was a life lived at the intersection of the abstract and the practical, of the theoretical and the applied. He was a thinker who was equally at home in the rarefied world of pure mathematics and in the messy, chaotic world of human affairs. He was a problem solver, a creator of new knowledge, and a key figure in the great intellectual and social transformations of his time. And as we delve deeper into his world, we begin to see that the quiet, contemplative life of the mathematician was anything but dull. It was a life of intense intellectual excitement, of profound creative satisfaction, and of lasting historical significance. The social world of the 18th-century mathematician was a complex and fascinating one. It was a world of patronage and privilege, of intellectual societies and learned academies, of coffeehouse debates and salon conversations. To be a successful mathematician in this era, it was not enough to be a brilliant thinker. One also had to be a savvy social operator, able to navigate the intricate hierarchies and unspoken rules of high society. Patronage was a crucial element in the life of many 18th-century mathematicians. In an age before the modern university system, with its tenure, track positions, and research grants, many mathematicians relied on the financial support of wealthy patrons. These patrons could be aristocrats, monarchs, or even wealthy merchants. They would provide the mathematician with a salary, a place to live, and the resources he needed to pursue his research. In return, the mathematician would bring prestige to his patron, entertain him with intellectual conversation, and perhaps even dedicate his books to him. The relationship between a mathematician and his patron was often a delicate one. The mathematician had to be careful to maintain his intellectual independence, to not allow his research to be unduly influenced by the whims of his patron. But he also had to be mindful of his social obligations, to be a charming and witty companion, to be a credit to his patron's court or household. The great Leonhard Euler, one of the most prolific mathematicians in history, spent much of his career in the service of royal patrons. He worked at the court of Frederick the Great of Prussia in Berlin and at the court of Catherine the Great of Russia in St. Petersburg. His patrons provided him with the financial security and intellectual freedom he needed to produce a staggering amount of work. But he also had to endure the petty jealousies and political intrigues of court life. Learned societies and academies were another important feature of the 18th-century mathematical world. These were organizations that brought together the leading thinkers of the day to share their research, to debate new ideas, and to publish their findings. The Royal Society of London, the Académie des Sciences in Paris, the Berlin Academy, these were the most prestigious scientific institutions of their time. To be elected as a member of one of these academies was a great honor, a recognition of one's standing in the intellectual community. The meetings of these academies were often formal affairs, with members presenting their papers to a distinguished audience. The papers would then be discussed and debated, sometimes with great passion and intensity. The academies also published their own journals, which were the primary means of disseminating new scientific knowledge. A mathematician's reputation could be made or broken by the papers he published in these journals. But the intellectual life of the 18th-century mathematician was not confined to the formal settings of the court and the academy. The coffeehouse, a new and exciting social institution, also played a vital role. Coffeehouses were places where men from all walks of life could gather to drink the stimulating new beverage, to read the latest newspapers and pamphlets, and to engage in lively and often raucous debate. In the coffeehouses of London, Paris, and other European cities, mathematicians would meet with their peers, with students, and with anyone else who was interested in the latest scientific and philosophical ideas. They would discuss their work, argue about controversial theories, and collaborate on new projects. The coffee house was a place of intellectual ferment, a breeding ground for new ideas and new discoveries. The salon, a more refined and exclusive social gathering, was another important venue for intellectual exchange. Salons were hosted by wealthy and intelligent women who would invite the leading artists, writers, and thinkers of the day to their homes. In the elegant drawing rooms of these salons, mathematicians could mingle with the cultural and political elite and engage in sophisticated and witty conversation. The salon was a place where science and the humanities could meet, where the rigid boundaries between different fields of knowledge could be broken down. The social world of the 18th century mathematician was a world of opportunity and constraint, of intellectual freedom and social obligation. It was a world that required not only a brilliant mind, but also a certain degree of social grace and political savvy. But it was also a world that provided the mathematician with the support, the stimulation, and the community he needed to pursue his work. And as we continue to explore this world, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complex interplay of ideas, personalities, and social forces that shaped the course of mathematical history. The education of an 18th century mathematician was a long and arduous process, one that was typically available only to the sons of the wealthy and privileged. It was an education that was steeped in the classical tradition, with a strong emphasis on Latin, Greek, and the humanities. But it was also an education that was beginning to incorporate the new scientific and mathematical ideas of the Age of Enlightenment. A young boy destined for a life of scholarship would typically begin his education at home with a private tutor. The tutor would teach him the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic. He would also introduce him to the classical languages, which were considered essential for any educated person. The boy would spend long hours memorizing Latin declensions and Greek verb conjugations and reading the works of ancient authors like Cicero, Virgil, and Homer. At the age of 14 or 15, the boy would be sent to a university. The universities of the 18th century were ancient and venerable institutions, but they were also often resistant to change. The curriculum was still heavily focused on theology, law, and medicine, the traditional faculties of the medieval university. Mathematics and the natural sciences were often relegated to a secondary role. However, things were beginning to change. The scientific revolution of the 17th century had created a new and powerful body of knowledge, and the universities were slowly beginning to incorporate this new knowledge into their curricula. New professorships in mathematics and natural philosophy were being created, and new textbooks were being written that reflected the latest scientific discoveries. A student of mathematics at an 18th century university would typically begin his studies with a course on Euclidean geometry. He would spend hours with a compass and a straightedge, working his way through the propositions of Euclid's Elements, a book that had been the cornerstone of mathematical education for over 2,000 years. He would learn the art of logical deduction, of constructing rigorous proofs from a set of axioms and postulates. After mastering Euclid, the student would move on to the study of algebra, the art of manipulating symbols and solving equations. He would learn about the work of Renaissance mathematicians like Cardano and Tartaglia, who had developed methods for solving cubic and quartic equations. He would also be introduced to the new symbolic notation of Franz, Osvat, and René Descartes, which had made algebra a much more powerful and flexible tool. The culmination of the student's mathematical education would be the study of calculus, the new and powerful mathematics of change and motion. He would learn about the work of Newton and Leibniz, the two great inventors of calculus, and about the ongoing debate over who deserved priority for the discovery. He would learn how to calculate derivatives and integrals, how to solve differential equations, and how to apply calculus to problems in physics and astronomy. But the education of an 18th century mathematician was not just about mastering a body of knowledge. It was also about developing a certain kind of mind, a mind that was logical, rigorous, and disciplined. The student was expected to be able to think for himself, to question authority, and to construct his own arguments. He was expected to be a creator of new knowledge, not just a passive consumer of old knowledge. Upon completing his university studies, A young mathematician had a number of career paths open to him. He could try to secure a position as a professor at a university, a difficult and often frustrating task. He could seek the patronage of a wealthy individual, a more common but also more precarious path. He could enter one of the professions that required mathematical skills, such as engineering, surveying, or finance. Or he could simply live the life of a gentleman scholar, pursuing his research without any formal position or salary. Whatever path he chose, the 18th-century mathematician was a member of a small and elite group. He was a man who had been given the privilege of a rigorous intellectual training, and who had dedicated his life to the pursuit of knowledge. He was a key figure in the great intellectual project of the Enlightenment, the project of using reason and science to understand and improve the world. And as we reflect on his education, we are reminded of the importance of this project, a project that continues to shape our world today. The daily life of an 18th-century mathematician was a life of routine and discipline, of quiet contemplation and intense mental effort. It was a life that was structured around the rhythms of the sun, the seasons, and the academic calendar. But it was also a life that was subject to the whims of health, of fortune, and of intellectual inspiration. Our mathematician would typically rise early, often before dawn. The morning hours were considered the best time for study, when the mind was fresh and the house was quiet. He would wash and dress by the light of a single candle, a simple and frugal ritual. His clothes would be sober and respectable, the attire of a scholar and a gentleman. He would then descend to his study, the heart of his intellectual world. The study would be a small, private room, filled with books, papers, and scientific instruments. The air would be thick with the scent of old leather, of beeswax, and of cold pipe smoke. He would light a fire in the hearth, a welcome source of warmth and light in the chilly morning air. He would begin his workday with a period of reading, of reviewing the work of other mathematicians, of catching up on the latest scientific news. He would read with a critical eye, his quill in hand, making notes in the margins of his books and copying out important passages into his commonplace book. After his morning reading, he would turn to his own research. This was the core of his daily work, the source of his greatest frustrations and his most profound joys. He would sit at his desk for hours on end, his mind focused on a single problem, his hand moving slowly and deliberately across the page. He would fill sheet after sheet of paper with equations, with diagrams, with false starts and dead ends. He would mutter to himself, he would pace the room, he would stare out the window for long periods of time, his mind lost in a world of abstract thought. The midday meal would be a simple affair, often eaten alone in his study. It would consist of bread, cheese, and a glass of wine or beer. He would eat quickly, his mind still on his work, eager to return to the problem that had been occupying him all morning. The afternoon would be a time for more social and practical activities. He might have to attend a meeting of his learned society, or deliver a lecture at the university. He might have to meet with his patron, or with a student who needed his guidance. He might have to deal with the practicalities of running a household, of paying bills, of ordering supplies. In the late afternoon, he might take a walk, a welcome break from the confines of his study. He would stroll through the streets of his city, or through the fields and woods of the countryside. He would observe the world around him with a mathematician's eye, seeing patterns and structures in the natural and the man-made world. He would see the geometry in the architecture of a building, the physics in the flight of a bird, the botany in the arrangement of leaves on a stem. The evening meal would be the main meal of the day, and it would often be a more social occasion. He might dine with his family, if he was married, or with a group of friends and colleagues. The conversation would be lively and wide-ranging, touching on everything from politics and religion to art and literature. After dinner, he would return to his study for a final period of work. He would review the progress he had made during the day. He would plan his work for the next day, and he would correspond with his fellow mathematicians. His letters were a vital part of his intellectual life, a way of sharing his ideas, of getting feedback on his work, and of keeping up with the latest developments in his field. He would work late into the night, by the light of a single candle, the only sound the scratching of his quill on paper. He would finally go to bed, his mind still buzzing with ideas, his dreams often filled with the strange and beautiful world of mathematics. This was the daily routine of an 18th-century mathematician. It was a life of discipline, of dedication, and of deep intellectual passion. It was a life that was often lonely, and that was filled with its share of frustrations and disappointments. But it was also a life that was rich in the joys of discovery, in the satisfactions of creative work, and in the sense of being part of a great and noble intellectual enterprise. And as we imagine this life, we gain a deeper respect for the men who lived it, and for the enduring legacy that they have left to us. The legacy of the 18th-century mathematician is a profound and enduring one. The work that was done during this period laid the foundations for the modern world, a world that is shaped by science, by technology, and by the power of mathematical reasoning. The ideas and discoveries of the 18th-century mathematician continue to resonate in our lives today, in ways that are both obvious and subtle. The most obvious legacy of the 18th-century mathematician is in the field of science. The development of calculus, the crowning achievement of the era, provided the language and the tools that were necessary for the great scientific breakthroughs of the 19th and 20th centuries. Without calculus, there would be no modern physics, no modern chemistry, no modern engineering. The work of Euler, of Lagrange, of Laplace, this is the bedrock upon which our scientific understanding of the universe is built. The 18th-century mathematician also made crucial contributions to the development of technology. His work on mechanics, on hydraulics, on optics, this was essential for the design of the new machines that powered the Industrial Revolution. His work on navigation, on cartography, on astronomy, this was essential for the great voyages of exploration and trade that connected the world. The 18th-century mathematician was not just an abstract thinker. He was also a practical problem solver, a man who used his knowledge to change the world. But the legacy of the 18th-century mathematician is not just about science and technology. It is also about a new way of thinking, a new way of seeing the world. The 18th century was the Age of Enlightenment, a time when reason and evidence began to challenge the authority of tradition and dogma. The mathematician was a key figure in this intellectual revolution. He was a champion of logic, of rigor, of the power of the human mind to understand the universe. The 18th-century mathematician showed that the world was not a mysterious and unpredictable place, but a rational and ordered system that could be understood through the language of mathematics. He showed that even the most complex phenomena, like the motion of the planets or the flow of tides, could be described by a few simple and elegant laws. He gave us a new confidence in our ability to understand and to control our world. This new way of thinking had a profound impact on all aspects of human life. It influenced the development of new political and social theories based on the idea of natural rights and the consent of the governed. It influenced the development of new economic theories based on the idea of free markets and rational self-interest. It influenced the development of new artistic and literary styles based on the idea of clarity, of order, and of classical harmony. The legacy of the 18th century mathematician is all around us. We see it in the bridges we cross, in the computers we use, in the medicines we take. We see it in the democratic institutions that govern our societies, in the scientific methods that we use to acquire knowledge, in the very way that we think about ourselves and our place in the universe. But perhaps the most important legacy of the 18th century mathematician is a more personal one. It is the legacy of a life dedicated to the pursuit of truth, of a mind that is constantly questioning, constantly exploring, constantly striving to understand. It is the legacy of a quiet hero, a man who, in the solitude of his study, helped build the modern world. And so, as our journey into the past comes to a close, let us take a moment to reflect on the life and work of the 18th century mathematician. Let us remember his dedication, his perseverance, his intellectual courage, and let us be grateful for the rich and enduring legacy that he has left to us, a legacy that continues to inspire and to challenge us today. May the quiet, contemplative world of the 18th century mathematician bring you a sense of peace, of calm, and of deep, restful sleep. Good night.